Good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, May 21st, 2015 meeting of the Lawrence Public Schools School Committee. At this time, we'd ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Have a seat. This time, we'd ask that you observe a moment of silence for our troops serving overseas. Thank you and good evening. I'd like to begin the superintendent's update tonight with some recognition. Mr. Mayor, I am proud to tell you that on Thursday, April 2nd, Adelita Jimenez, a lunch aide at the Rollins School, performed the Heimlich maneuver on a kindergarten student. Ashley was choking on a piece of a hot dog. As a result of her quick action, the piece was dislodged from her throat. The student was fine, was checked by the nurse, parents were notified. Adelina is a humble person who wants no credit. Nonetheless, we've called her here today, Mr. Mayor. She's received her certification in CPR and first aid through a Nutrition Service Department professional development program, and we're glad that she did. She's been an employee since 1996, and she's here tonight to get a certificate from this school committee. So, Adelina Jimenez, could you please come up?
Muchas gracias. Bien hecho, ¿eh? Un placer.
Would the school committee come up front and take a photo with us? As the school committee was aware, we're also pleased to tell you about our student racing challenge team, Team Adrenaline. They recently were invited to and participated in the nationals after winning the regional competition. There were 35 teams from around the country that participated. Each had already placed in the top 3 in their particular region. The competition this year was at an incredibly high level. We're pleased to announce that the Lawrence Adrenaline team placed second in the team presentations, a business category that combines videotape presentations and a live judged 8-minute presentation of our club's activities and goals with including a PowerPoint. They also placed second in the race events and were knocked out of first place by an unfortunate crash, I think on the last turn, where the car was rendered inoperable. Even so, they still finished in second. So 2 second-place finishes at nationals. They got to talk with students all over the country and query them about their engineering projects, many of which were quite impressive. Again, our kids were taking notes about how to outdo the other teams next year, when they've promised me they will win the entire national tournament, perhaps. I think taking second place is proving some strong motivation for the future for our kids. What an amazing honor. What an amazing representation for the city is our Team Adrenaline, and I believe they are coming up to receive a Team Adrenaline Certificate of Achievement from this school committee. Mr. Mayor. Juniors, they're coming back.
We want the you guys to come out, so step all you, not so tall people, step forward a little bit. There you go. You gentlemen that are a little taller can have one more. You guys have to hold this in front of you.
Mike Lynch, would you like to say a few words, too, about the team?
Of course. I think Mr. Provo and I have a little joke running between us that we do nothing very well. Everything that this team has accomplished has been theirs. We're coaches and coaches only. We point them in a direction, and they've taken it to another level. One thing we found out today, by the way, that we didn't know before, was they got third place in the engineering challenge out of these 35 teams in the country.
Wow.
And that's what else.
Good job, guys. I can't see you. I think we'll get a picture, okay? Right, two, go. One more. Right. Hey, good job.
Thank you.
We had a great trip.
Thanks, guys.
I have an excuse, though.
So as you saw, many of those students are juniors and will be coming back, so we're pretty excited about that. At this time, we'd like to show you a brief video on our Acceleration Academy program. You'll recall these are vacation academies. We had almost 2,500 kids in both February and April come in over the vacations to get extra help. I will note that while many other school districts were canceling any kind of academies over the February vacation, our children went all 5 days, the hardy souls that they are, and got extra help. So I think we have a video to play. You'll note in your packet, too, the attendance rates by school.
My name is Jesus Geronimo, and today we're at the HOD Acceleration Academy. I'm a sophomore, and today we're doing a project called Honori Towers, where we have 3 washers and we have to move it from point A to point B or point C with the least amount of moves possible. And it's kind of hard, but it's pretty fun to do.
Hi, I'm Mike Dudley. I'm here with the Sontag Prize Acceleration Academy teachers. My students are measuring the perimeter, the area, and the volumes around Lawrence High School in order to prep their geometry.
We get 3 plus 3 makes 33. That's the way it ought to be, but teachers...
Hi, my name is Janine Ledford, and I am from Los Angeles, California. I'm honored to be a part of the April Sontag program with Lawrence Public Schools. This week we are going over the blues, the origination of the blues, the element of the blues. The kids are learning how to improvise and do the 12-bar blues and do rhythm and melody, and they'll be writing their own blues as well. So it's been a great week to be here with the Sontag program.
Hi, my name is Joe Petrosino. I'm a physical education teacher here at the Weatherby School. I work with Matthew Curran, my co-teacher. And today, during the Math Academy, what we did was we worked on positive and negative numbers. We did addition and subtraction, and we incorporated it into a basketball game. The name of the game was called Popper Ball.
Just overall, very pleased with our kids and how hard they're working. Just very thrilled about what they're doing. As we move on to updates, I want to let folks know in their packets they should have the poster flyer for the new centralized registration, denoting the times for registration. You'll see at the K-8 space, no appointments required Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Also Thursdays from 4 to 7, no appointments. And then on Saturdays, the third Saturday of each month, except during the months of June, July, and December, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., the Family Resource Center will be opened on Island Street on 60 Island Street to take registrations for K-8 students. Grades 9 through 12 registration will continue to happen at the high school. In June through August, that'll be from noon to 3 o'clock, Monday to Thursday. And September to May, it's Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. These posters will be going up all around town. We have placed a miniature version of these posters in many media outlets as well, and it will be up on our website, just so folks know how to register their child. I don't know if there's any questions about that,
Any questions?
or any of the other items.
No, we're good.
At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Fiato to come up and talk briefly about the LHS school calendar for next year and the bell schedule. Mr. Fiato, are you here? Right here. Right behind me, fair enough.
Good evening, everyone. Congratulations again to the team Adrenaline who are bravely sticking around for the rest of the meeting. Good job, everyone. I'll give everyone a chance to get the copies that I'll be reviewing. What I'm here to do today is to talk about the bell schedule and the calendar for next year, and be welcome to take any questions after I review the summary here. So we're really moving towards a unified Lawrence High School, and we have a standardized calendar and schedule across campus by grade level. In the past, as you know, we've had 6 different schedules for grades 9 to 12, and we're moving in the direction so that we can have one schedule for grade 9 and one bell schedule for grades 10 to 12. All these schedules will provide opportunities for students to have embedded intervention and advisory periods where to be determined at their school level. Important key feature will be time for teacher collaboration across the campus, which is something we're desperately seeking to grow for future years. And that will be by grade level and by content area. And I can get into more details about the 9th grade and the 10 to 12 schedules. So the new 9th grade programs, we've been talking about the 9th grade academy, which will include special programs for at-risk students, ELL newcomer students, and the Abbott Lawrence Accelerated Studies program. That will have one bell schedule for all those students, roughly 1,000 in total. The calendar will begin for 9th graders a bit earlier to try to prepare them for the transition to high school. That will be similar to what we did in the summer for LHS Ready. It'll be student orientation 1 week prior to when the 10th to 12th graders return. The bell schedule will be a 55-minute period, including daily interventions, acceleration blocks, and daily electives chosen by the students. Course subjects will include English, World Studies, Algebra 1, and Biology. In the Abbott Lawrence Academy, physics will be the science course. Common planning time will be built into the schedule for all teachers in 9th grade. In the upper school, it's been a great pleasure to work collaboratively with the principals and their teams to create a common bell schedule for all of the existing schools. So BMF, HHS, HLD, PFA, and MST will remain as schools for next year, and we will transition INT into a newcomers program for grades 11 through 12. We will continue to facilitate cross-collaboration among teachers so that they'll have a chance to get together and share best practices and plan. And one big feature would be all 10th grade teams will be created across the school so that teachers will have more time to plan together, not just in their own schools, but across the entire campus. The calendar will begin on August 24th and the same day as the rest of the district for grades 10 to 12. The schedule remains similar for the upper school. If you are for 3 schools right now, they're in a 90-minute block already, and we will continue with that. All upper grades will align to that 90-minute block schedule, which will enable opportunities for students to take crossover classes between schools, and that's something that we've been looking for a while now. That'll include AP courses, electives, and other shared activities. So, for example, we can get all 11th graders to come together for an assembly if we should give them a message, and that will be during the same bell schedule and the same common period. So we're gearing up for the opening of school. The 9th grade academy is gradually coming into fruition, and the next steps include the planning process for finalizing the high school transformation. So the primary focus in the coming months will be to ensure that we have strong communications to families, students, and teachers about the changes that will be happening in the fall. And we want to ensure that we have a smooth start for a successful school year in August. The preliminary plan for the phase of the LHS transformation will kick off right after graduation. We want to make sure we get our seniors off in the right direction, and we'll continue through the first semester and actually over the summer. In June, as soon as our seniors walk and get their diplomas, we're going to continue the ongoing efforts to communicate and finalize any changes that are happening this fall. We'll hold additional meetings with the educators at the high school, Lawrence Teachers Union, LPS partnership team format, and we'll continue to keep communicate with the school and community stakeholders. I'll be appearing on the LHS Connections TV show in the next couple of weeks, which will be broadcast across the city and at the high school, and we'll show those in all of the high school classes so that students are getting firsthand information. We'll be convening all LHS educators the first week of June to preview work group topics for the planning stages for 2015 and 16, so we can get that, continue to get that faculty buy-in and generate those ideas. During the school year next year, we'll have teacher transformation work groups, which will meet during PD days, common planning times, and before and after school. Teams will present recommendations for their work groups to Mr. Riley and myself for consideration, and students and families will have additional opportunities to provide feedback on the drafts in the fall and in the winter. And we hope to have we will have the LHS transformation plan for SY 2016-17 finalized by the winter of 2015 and 16. So at this point, I know I'm sure there's some questions, and I'd love to have the discussion with the school committee and the mayor and our students now, if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fiato. Are any questions? This, Member Coronado, Member Lopez. Member Lopez.
So is the crossover classes, that's effective this upcoming fall?
Yes.
So, okay.
The crossover classes, so you know, will be mainly for AP classes, but we're also looking to share electives as well. So if there's an elective such as a journalism class or a language class that you're interested in that's not offered in your school, we'll work to get those students in those classes. That can also include some art classes or other electives that are unique to the school. The goal here is to open up the campus so that more students have opportunities to take classes that they're interested in. That will be mainly for our upperclassmen, 11th and 12th graders.
Member Coronado?
Will the ending time and the starting time be the same for next year?
We will change I should have included that. Thank you for bringing that up. We will start the school year at 8 a.m., which is a half an hour earlier, and end the school day at 2:45 p.m. This change is prompted by the desire and the need for a lot of our students to make their way onto extracurricular activities, sporting events, and to stay current with what's currently happening with other area high schools. For example, some of our sports teams have to really rush and get out of campus. Sometimes actually have to leave class early if they want to make it to state meets or other athletic events. And we certainly don't want students losing academic time in order to participate in sports. And we want to put them on an equal playing field with all of the rest of the communities.
And this is 8 a.m. to 2:45 across
Yes.
the whole campus?
Yes, and so it's the same start and end time for 9th through 12th grade. That will ease issues with any transportation and if there are siblings in 9th grade through 10 to 12.
Anyone else? Mr. Blatchford?
Thank you. So for Abbott Lawrence being an accelerated academy, does that include extra learning time, or is the day exact same for that as well?
The day would be pretty much the same. What the one recommendation that we had, and we're going to pursue it, is to ensure that students participate in an extracurricular activity in Abbott Lawrence. That's a commitment that those students and families are willing to make. So that's one way that there will be extra time on learning. But the bell schedule, the academic schedule, will remain the same for all programs on the campus.
And as for the way the building's set up, so we have two buildings which are going to be the 9th grade academy. Is that still one floor going to be 10th grade, or is it?
One floor would be with, we'll have the newcomers program on that one floor. And currently it's the International High School.
Okay. And then for the other four, it's going to be split between the existing 5?
Yes. So BMF currently will be relocated into 3 other buildings. Okay. So that would be, that's I think an outgrowth of the unification of the campus, and something that we're going to have to work on for next year. We'll have tighten up our protocols around transitions to make sure the transitions are smooth. We're really excited about this, but want to make sure that our students get they're in the appropriate classrooms with the appropriate labs and computer resources. So we want to make sure that those are happening. But yeah, we're going to have to break up the BMF high school in order to make this happen.
And down the road, so is the plan down the road to eliminate the academy system in the sense, and it'll just be one cohesive high school?
That's a discussion that we're having now, and that the goal is to unify Lawrence High School into one campus. And if that becomes an academy model, an upper school or lower school or grade level teams, that discussion will be had after the graduation. But it's likely that the schools as they're currently labeled will probably not exist in the same fashion.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Payano.
Thank you, Mr. Fiato. I have a question. Our schedules, it says including daily interventions, intervention blocks. Can you explain to me what that means?
Sure. One model that I think the middle schools have been taking the lead on through some of the work that's going on with the redesign is through intervention blocks, and we're learning from the success of the middle schools to adopt some of these strategies. So an intervention block would mean if there are students struggling in particular areas, content areas, for example, if we know that there's particular students struggling with literacy, we would place them in a literacy block with a reading teacher. Some students might be struggling with concepts around math or science, and they would get additional support in small groups to receive instructional support in those areas. And that will be, so in the 9th grade, that time will be dedicated, and the teachers will have to meet regularly to know exactly where their students are in real time in order to make those determinations where students will be placed for their interventions.
Follow up. For students that don't need that, where would they go?
So there's enrichment involved in that as well. So we want to push students who are high achieving. So I think every student should deserve opportunities to grow and get better. So there would be challenging assignments that would be presented to them, or enrichment opportunities to extend beyond the current curriculum if they were meeting mastery in their particular subject area. So all students will be pushed at the rate that they're comfortable and where they're currently at academically.
Okay. It also says here that you will be transferring, instead of biology for 9th grade, the 9th grade academy, the Abbott Lawrence Academy or high school will be doing physics. Why physics instead of biology? Just wondering.
What we found is that for students who are interested in going into higher education and pursuing elite into elite colleges, and physics was the course that was recommended by the majority of elite schools. It's very difficult to find high quality physics teachers at the high school level, and they're sparse. We do have an excellent physics teacher that we believe will be beneficial beneficial to meeting those goals at the Abbott Lawrence. But that's the primary reason. In terms of 9th grade, MCAS is tested in the 9th grade, and the majority of our teachers have been biology teachers. So it's also been customary for us to offer biology on a larger scale throughout the campus. We'll look at the results of our MCAS and determine if biology will continue to be the course that we offer in the 9th grade for all students based on some of our MCAS testing and results within the next year.
Okay. I forgot where I was going with that. Okay, yes. If a student, let's say, because I know you had a test into the Abbott Lawrence Academy. So let's say you have a student that's in regular 9th grade, but they're really great at math. Do they have to take Algebra 1, or can they take Algebra 2?
In the 9th grade?
Yes, because I think with the Abbott Lawrence, I think they start with Algebra 2, or is it a higher math?
No, it's probably Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 in geometry, and having that geometry component as well.
Yeah, probably with Abbott Lawrence, probably not Algebra 1, since they're supposed to be kind of higher up there. But let's say a student comes into the 9th grade academy and they didn't test into Abbott Lawrence. Maybe they were weak in other areas, but when it came to math, they're a good math student, so they should be at Algebra 2. In a case like it's not everyone's going to fit this mold, but I'm sure there'll be a few exceptions. For these exceptions, is there a way for them to take Algebra 2, or will they have to kind of fit with everyone else and do Algebra 1?
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe at this point Algebra 2 would not be offered in the 9th grade, so we'd have to look at those special circumstances to accelerate students who would be in need of being pushed at a higher level.
Okay.
But that's a good question. It's a good consideration, something that I've always struggled with making sure that we have a place for every student's ability level.
And I wouldn't rule out, a student in that situation being placed in a geometry class with 10th graders or an algebra 2 class with 10th graders. I mean, I think the beauty of running on the same schedule now is that we're able to open it up, more electives, more enrichment, more specialized classes to kids and personalize their learning. So the hope is that we'll be able to take care of that.
My follow-up to that question, it was, and maybe this is not known yet, is how do we determine who those exceptions are? Because one of the things that I found, speaking to ninth graders in the past, is that sometimes they should have been in Algebra 2, but they never spoke up, or whatever it might be. Is there anything?
We have much richer data now coming from the middle schools with ANET testing, MAP testing. There's common formative assessments and common assessments being administered at the middle school. That data is being shared with our incoming ninth grade teachers and the counselors to better place students in appropriate classes based on the data, in addition to MCAS.
Okay. My last question is regarding, so if we're transitioning into sort of like this one school, right now we have principals, we have like different administration structures in these specific high schools. What happens when we transition in? How does the structure look like?
I would say that at all times, the student needs to drive what the schedule looks like, what the structures look like. So I think it's early to tell where people will land and who will land in what position, and what additional positions would be created, what positions might be either transitioned into other positions or moved across the campus. So I think there will be changes. I think it's premature to make those types of predictions now, not knowing what the structure would look like.
We're taking next year to plan and get feedback from everybody to try to figure out what the right configuration is in the upper grades. So I think that's to be determined. But we will certainly update this committee throughout the year next year.
Okay. Yeah, no, because it just seems like if you are transitioning to a model where it's just one high school and the ninth grade academy, that it seems like you will be getting rid of at least the titles of the 5 different principals. I think whenever those discussions start happening, it'd be great to have the board involved, or at least know what's going on.
Sure, absolutely.
Anyone else? Ms. Ortiz?
Just one thing. Speaking to Mr. Prayano's point, and giving a little elaboration from a parent's perspective, because I am a parent and I do have a son in 8th grade in the middle school, the enrichment and the intervention is done very well at the Partham School. I say so because my son was in intervention and he was found out, and he purposely went in intervention. I think he wasn't there when they do an in-class test, and you see where you go, and they're found out. So I think that we'll trust the high school in that way to be able to find out kids that are actually not in need of enrichment, but in need of intervention, but of enrichment. My son tests into Algebra 2 at the moment in his placement testing and geometry, and maybe even a little pre-calc. And so I know that there's that caliber of children that are coming out of our middle schools that are not in Abbott. And so to his point, there should be, if we're going to use the raw data of ANET, then there needs to be an offering of Algebra 1, Algebra 2 with geometry, or a placement test at that time to be able to give it a second offering, so that way they can continue as we move to this one high school model. So that way, in my sophomore year, I'm going to do pre-calc. Well, no, I'm going to choose to do, depending on what science or what vocation they're going to go into. Biology is a good basis for anybody that's going to go into medicine, or as a basis period. But physics is definitely welcomed, because I know that my daughter would love biology. She wants to be a forensic scientist. Well, my son doesn't. He wants to be an engineer, and there's the avenue for physics. So I think that as we're, and to reuse the words that we've been using, reimagining how we're doing it next year, and as we're going on to that, we'll have a nice menu almost of places that we can place kids, because Abbott can only fit 100. and we have much more than 100 that are above this Algebra 1 level, my
Yeah.
son included.
We concur. I mean, I think it's clear over the last few years, we're sending hundreds more kids who are proficient and advanced in both math and English to the high school. So we recognize that our students are coming better prepared to the high school. What I would say to you is we will get back to you sooner rather than later on choices for ninth graders, because that obviously is happening, and it's something that folks are working on. When we talk about 10 through 12, I do want to allow the teachers and the administrators inside the high school to really weigh in on, what the structure is going to look like. For me personally, I think there's an opportunity to keep a small school structure while still being one high school and have the best of both worlds. But I want to make sure we hear from the teachers and the principals and administrators there for that. But as far as ninth graders, you should expect we'll come back with more information sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Mrs. Mariano.
Hi. Mr. Fiato, I'm really thrilled over the Common Bell schedule and the ability to cross over, because when we had the opportunity to meet with the student leaders, that came out loud and clear in their recommendations for re-imaging the school. I just have a question about schedules. That also was brought up. Is it going to be easier now where you're at a Common Bell schedule so that more students coming in will have their schedules in hand when school starts, rather than waiting for counselors to meet with them and so forth and so on?
I think
How are you planning for that?
Each school will create and build their own schedule for their students. They know their students best. They're working now on most students have selected the courses. All students have selected the courses that they want to take for next year. Teachers will be recommending students for honors and advanced placement classes. Right now, the counselors and the principals and their teams are working on creating, inputting student data and assigning teachers to that, so to create the Bell schedule. What we have now is great. All of our students have access to Power School. So once the Bell schedule is up, they'll be able to see it from their computer, their laptop. If they don't, a schedule will be mailed home to them in the summer.
Okay, thank you.
So they'll have them in hand by the time they enroll in school. In a lot of cases, they'll know their schedule well before, because they can get a preview on Power School.
Good. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Student Lopez.
As a student perspective, I took physics freshman year, and that really helped me continuing on into junior year, because the concepts that you learn in physics kind of weave into other science classes and other math classes, compared to my friends who took biology. They were more focused on passing the biology MCAS. So I think that, and also for the students, for the upperclassmen who already chose their schedules, will we be able to re-choose some classes because of the one kind of like crossover?
We're actually in the process of having discussions with your principals now about which classes will be shared across all schools and which classes will remain germane to to one high school only. So there will be some additional courses that, depending on your school, that will be up for bids. The thing that I want to make sure everyone knows, even though we have a common schedule, even though there will be choice, not every student, still every student will not be able to take every class that they want. There's just certain limitations. Just based on if we have 100 slots for photography and 1,000 students want photography, we're not going to be able to offer it. So preference will be given to the seniors and any student that's looking at a requirement for that for a career, or if they want to go to College of Mass Art. We'll make sure that they get what they need to be successful with their next steps. But there will be much greater flexibility with student schedules in the years to come, including next year.
Also, will we be following an A day and B day schedule?
Yes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh,
May I
student Karan. Say it.
I didn't hear her question.
Can you just say the question one more time?
Oh, currently, like, each school has their own A day and B day schedules, so we don't take all of our classes on one day. We kind of divide them into 2 days. So I was just wondering if, like, because if, for example, MST has A day today, HLD will have B day. Like, it'll be their B day, so I was
It's
just
actually the
wondering.
same.
It is?
Yes.
Oh, okay, my bad.
We actually do have limited crossovers now with schools who have the same schedule. So those schools have the same A day and B day.
Student Coronado.
So not right now, like each
Hold the mic
academy-
close so we can. Pull the microphone close to you.
Sorry. Well, each academy right now has their set amount of guidance counselors. How will that look like when all the schools come together?
That's a great question. We're able to, for the upper school, we're able to establish and maintain the same amount of guidance counselors for you. So you'll still have the same, every school will have 2 counselors as they do now.
And they'll be working with one less grade, so.
I think that's a big win for us. We'll be able to lower the counselor to student ratio as a result of that.
Well, Mr. Rodriguez, you have the floor. You have the floor, Mr. Rodriguez.
Go ahead. Well, okay. This is a great program that I'm seeing here. I would like to thank you for that. But in terms of students going to college, if everything goes through and everything goes well, do we expect to have more students going to college based on these changes that you guys are making right now? And if that's the case, do you have any idea, like based on increasement or percentage? There's an idea. It's nothing for sure because nothing have gone through yet.
I think a lot of the changes we'll see increased results in student achievement. As a result of increased student achievement, we will see students graduating in a higher level. We'll see a reduction in the dropout rate. That is our goal. The students are more engaged in school and better prepared at the 9th grade level. As many of you know, we've talked about this at previous meetings, the 9th grade is a pivotal year. It's a make or break year for most students. So with a stronger 9th grade, we expect to see less students being retained and more students moving forward. And it's absolutely our goal that more students not only graduate from high school, but go to college, but not just get accepted to college, but finish and attend and graduate, whether from a community college or a 4-year institution. So it's I'm making a prediction that yes, but that's a prediction, and I believe that will come true. But I don't have any specific data to share with you in terms of what that would look like.
And I just have a question from my colleague right here. What's the student ratio per counselor?
So in the in every school right now, there's approximately 500 students and 2 counselors. So 500 students and 2 guidance counselors, 2 counselors.
So about 250.
Yes.
So what will it be changing?
Mr. Rodriguez still has the floor?
Sorry, apologize.
Go ahead.
Oh, it doesn't work like that. Oh, are you done?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. Ms. Ortiz, you have the floor now. You're done.
He already asked my question,
Okay.
but I'll ask your question. So,
Okay,
I don't know what your question was, but my question is there an intent to increase that? Because I know my question when initially you guys showed the model was, will the guidance counselor carry the kid, not carry, but follow the kid from 9th grade to the upper school? And the answer was no, or no, not at this time. It could go either way. And I know that some of the ideal was to increase that guidance pending budgetary needs and some of those numbers had to work because 2 guidance counselors for 250 kids.
500.
Yeah, well, 250 per each, right?
We are lowering.
That's correct.
We are lowering
and
it
so
for
now
next
it's going to be 2 guidance counselors for about 350 kids.
Okay.
So it's a much smaller group. I mean, it's still
But still, that's
substantial, but I think it's better than many surrounding communities.
It's better than before.
Better than 500.
Yeah, it's much better than before, and I think it's comparable or better to other surrounding communities as well. So, that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight at the budget. We are putting a lot of our resources into the high school, which I think, we've worked hard in the K-8 space over the last few years, and I think it's time really to put those supports at the high school level.
Ms. Ortiz, you done?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Blatchford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that would be dropping it to about 175 per counselor. So 175 students per 1 counselor as opposed to the 250.
If we're assuming 350 in the
Yeah.
10 through 12 span, yep.
So couple, I guess, more nitty-gritty questions. Lunch schedules. When I was in high school, lunch schedules were a problem. So what are you doing for the lunch schedules now in comparison to how it was done in the past?
Just to give you an overview, the 9th grade will have lunch. They'll have 3 separate lunch periods, and they'll eat in the upper calf. The upper calf, and the upstairs calf. The upper calf comfortably fits 300 students, so basically breaking it down into 3 lunches for them. So they'll remain together. The lower schools will stagger for the first 3 lunches, and then when the 9th graders are done, there'll be 1 lunch for 2 schools, and they'll share the upper and lower calf on the last lunch.
Gotcha.
So we've mapped it out. We're thinking of pressure testing this before the end of the school year, after graduation when the seniors are gone, to see if it actually works out. So we may be doing that, and we'll keep you posted.
Great. So we're going to have now two schools. So BMF and INT are currently changing into the 9th grade. In the past, 9th graders tend to have a little more wear and tear on a building. So do we have a plan for the actual, essentially, possibility of that there's going to be a little more wear and tear on these 2 buildings? And if so, what does that look like? I guess would be the question.
Could I say my hope is that because we're offering a more structured program in 9th grade, there might be less wear and tear than treating them as if they were seniors. Is that a fair statement, Mr.
Very
Fiato?
fair.
Good enough.
And accurate.
And then finally, I guess the second, pulling off of what Mr. Payano had said about
What do you mean?
possibilities of having different types of classes, would it be more accurate to say that it is an academic versus an honors type of class? I know that's not the PC term that's used anymore, but essentially a higher level of that same class. So an honors class of Algebra 1 instead of just a remedial course. I don't know what the terminology would be, but is it that the system we're going to be going to?
In the upper school, we currently have college prep course and honors and AP.
Okay.
And we're going to look to push our students at the level that they're at and meet them where they're at, but accelerate them as quickly and appropriately as possible, and have high goals and expectations for all students.
And we'll bring you more information about the 9th grade program, which will also have some differentiation to Ms. Ortiz's point for students that are high performing.
Yes.
Thank you.
That went down fast. You all set? Oh, sorry, you feel better? Okay. Anyone else have any questions on this? Student Lopez.
Because the new 9th grade program will start 1 week earlier, let's say we have a crazy snowstorm like this year, would that mean that they would get out earlier as well?
Don't say that too loud.
Mr. Riley?
What was the question again?
Would you like to repeat your question, Ms. Lopez?
Because the 9th grade program starts 1 week earlier than the 10th grade up,
Right.
would that mean that if something like the snowstorm happened again,
That they would get out earlier?
would they get out earlier?
Let me say that's probably the best question I've been asked in the last year. That's very smart thinking. I'm not sure the answer to that question. We're going to have to talk about that at the administrative group, but I believe I have ordered no snow for next year, so that should not become an issue.
Follow Jeff Riley on Twitter. You'll find out.
No.
That was some quick math, Student Lopez.
Good representation for the students.
I think legally, we would be entitled to end 3 days earlier. Now, that is going to have to be a discussion amongst the teachers, staff, and the headmaster at the high school, whether we should just keep our freshmen in for those extra 3 days and have them end the same time as everyone else. But it is a great question.
Yeah, wouldn't want to rob them of enrichment time. Mr. Payano.
Real quick, Mr. Fiato, what time are you thinking that these lunches are going to start?
11.
11 a.m.?
Currently, the first lunch at the campus starts at 11, and we're maintaining pretty much a similar rhythm to the lunch periods, starting at 11, and our last lunch is at 1.
Great.
Thank you.
As you can see, there's a lot of interest and information around this process, not only because we feel like there's a lot at stake, but people are personally connected to this in ways maybe they hadn't in the past. So as much I think in this situation, over-informing is the best way to go. We don't want to get into the kitchen and try to figure out how to make the meal, but we sure are concerned about what meal is going to be served at the end of the day. So if you give us as much information as you can. My only question after such great questions by the board is, are you guys going to make the start date? With all these changes and all these structural changes, I think you're actually doing some work in the building too. Are you guys going to be able to go on the start date?
We're going to make our start date, Mr. Mayor.
All right, well, cool. I think that's all on that matter, Mr.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question? Just one more.
Just one more?
Yeah, one more.
You sure?
Yes.
All right, last bite.
Well, since our academy, MST, they have Saturday academic support some Saturdays when those all the academies get together. Do you think that will happen for all of the academies, or?
So you mean more of a campus Saturday program?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. I'd love to hear how you think we can make that happen, and if you have some ideas and with some of your colleagues and your peers, we can talk about it. I think everything's back on the table now to do more things campus-wide.
Okay.
So I would entertain any ideas to look at how we can unify the campus.
Mr. Fiat, can you just let us know your email, so in case anybody has any questions in the intro, maybe we can shoot them an email?
Sure.
Just people feel free to CC the superintendent so we're on the same page.
You want me to say it now?
Yeah, if you could,
All right,
that'd be great.
it's a long one. Michael.Fiato@lawrence.k12.ma.us.
And he's always been very open and ready to hear what suggestions and stuff like that. So I'm not sure that's not going to change anytime soon. Thank you so much.
Thank
both
you.
of
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, under updates, we're now going to talk about the proposed FY16 budget. The budget has gone online earlier this week. You also received the budget via email as requested earlier this week. We brought you hard copies today as well. And we've made extra hard copies available tonight for any public folks that want them. I want to thank some of the school committee members, led by Mr. Blatcher, who were able to come during the week to meet with Seth, our deputy superintendent, to get the budget questions answered, some preview questions. I just kind of want to back up and talk about the timeline of the budget. Our budget represents kind of the best thinking of where we are and where we'll spend our dollars. We are working from the mayor's appropriation, which is, I think, close to or aligned with the governor's budget. But as you know, the House, Senate, and governor won't approve a final state budget until late June or early July. So the sand's shifting a little bit. With that said, municipalities can't wait to do their budgets, and we've gone forward under the belief that if you don't drive the budget drives you. To that end, we need to know where we're starting from. Our budget this year, including grants, is $193 million. Last year, that number was about $188 million. I think we've seen a decline in grants to the tune of about $2 million, which leaves us a variance or a positive of, I think, about $4 million, which is about a 2% increase in the budget overall. When you look at it, we're up about 2% when you factor in everything. Now, when we begin to factor in the rising costs of utilities, transportation, benefits, and the enrollment surge, not to mention moving up rungs on the career ladder for teachers, it's fair to say this is a pretty tight budget year this year. The budget that we've provided for you represents the most detail we've given to date under receivership, and I'm told by Dr. Bergeron, who should be arriving shortly, that this is comparable to budgets that were presented in the years prior to receivership. So she says it's on par detail-wise with what folks were getting in school committees before receivership. With that said, we recognize folks would like even more detail in the future, and we endeavor to provide that. This is kind of a MASBO-approved format, and with all that said, I kind of want to acknowledge that part of the reason why it's difficult sometimes to give you even more details is because as a system, we have fundamentally changed our structure from a kind of command and control central office-driven structure to one where schools have a lot of autonomy and choice in setting up their own budgets. To that end, because that decision-making has shifted down to the school levels, all the schools have engaged in a budget process with their teacher leadership teams, and they're actually the ones driving the budgets. We give them kind of categories, and they're working within that to see what they need. So I just want to have people be mindful of that we're really putting a lot of the decision-making down at the individual school level with teachers, administrators, and parents because we recognize that each school has its own individual needs. Before I turn it over to Seth, I want to kind of just give some broad highlights of the budget. I think high school redesign, as you heard a few minutes ago, is certainly an area where we're adding extra supports. Our preschool expansion will continue. This is, you will recall from a previous meeting, the federally funded multi-year grant that Lawrence was lucky enough to get. We'll also be adding to our enrichment programming through not just this budget, but hopefully fundraising. We met recently with the Play Ball Foundation, who was Their slogan is "Get Feet on the Field," and they were very generous in my time in Boston to start an entire middle school program, athletic program, and they're now, I believe, willing to come up here and help add enrichments at the middle grades and maybe even in the upper elementary grades. So we should be hearing about that in the next week or two. We will keep you posted on that. With that said, I think because of the tight budget and the uncertainty around the final number from the state, we've also had to find savings. We've had to reduce the size for next year of our Acceleration Academy. We have some further slight cuts to central office. We've had, obviously we realized from savings from moving back into the schools, the central office. That obviously was a bill that we didn't have to pay this year or next year. So those things were things that we needed to look at when we made some difficult choices. With all of that said, I'm going to turn it over to Seth Racine, the deputy, who is the architect of this budget and will run through all the numbers and answer your questions in greater detail. Mr. Racine.
Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you, School Committee, for allowing us to speak tonight. The budget process is, every year there are going to be challenges and there are going to be different issues, but it is an incredible opportunity for every organization, whether it's at a school level or a district, to step back, assess how they're doing, see what changes need to be made, continue key initiatives that have been working really well. And that's what's actually been playing out over the last few months, really I think since December or even earlier than that, at all of our schools. Our principals have been working with their teacher leadership teams. They've taken a step back to say, wait a second, now that we have an opportunity to reflect and think about the following year, what are our priorities? What were our priorities this year, and what are our priorities going to be next year? Should they be the same? Should they be fine-tuned and honed to be better to help our students? How's our schedule working out? Do we need to think about it again? What is our calendar looking like? Start time, end time, enrichment services, instructional services, and academic services that we're providing, are those working well? Are they as we thought? Is the staffing level the right way? Or should it be reconfigured, and should we think about it in a different way? It's a powerful process that every single day can get really hectic and really, really busy and get chaotic. But it's an opportunity for teachers to come together with their principal, reflect how they're doing, and look ahead to the next year. That being said, there's never enough money to do everything we want to do. But it's my honor to be able to talk about at a high level what's happening across the district, what are the trends that are happening, and try to give a voice and represent the incredible work that continues to happen at our school level, led by our principals and the teacher leadership teams. And so here I am today for the third meeting to continue the conversation around the budget. So you'll recall back in March, we talked about giving you a preview of the budget process and talk about one major issue, which is definitely enrollment trends, that both we've seen about a 10% increase in the last 5 years, and we actually project another 10% increase in overall enrollment over the next 5 years. Last month in April, we came and talked about revenue, what's happening with state aid, what is happening with our grants for this year and next year. And today what's exciting is we can close the loop and then talk about expenditures. So we expect an overall budget for next year for the fiscal year, and I want to make sure everyone understands the fiscal year. It's pretty close to a school year, but the fiscal year is July 1 to the end of June. So when I say fiscal year 16, we're talking about the year from July 1, 2015 to June 30th, 2016. So we expect project a $193 million budget, which is about a 2% increase, a $4.5 million increase from the current year to next year. And we want to thank again profusely Mayor Rivera for his continued support on our general fund appropriation within his recommended budget to the City Council. It includes $173.9 million for the school department. This is a $6.5 million increase, a 4% increase for the school department, which is critical for us to continue a lot of the key initiatives that have happened to date. Unfortunately, the grants have not been as kind to us, and we expect approximately a 10% reduction in grants, which we talked a little bit about the revenue side, but we're going to talk a little more about expenditures this year. for next year, what's happening. So there's a couple key questions when you think about a budget. Where do we spend our money, and what are we spending it on? So let's first talk about where do we spend our money. You've got two pie charts in front of you here. On the left is the budget. Where's the general fund? This is excluding grants. Where's the general fund budget going? The big piece of the pie, 2/3 of the pie, it's going to schools, directly to schools. 63% is going to the schools, controlled by the schools. Another 16%, the red piece of pie down below, this is for benefits. Another 5%, about $8.7 million, is going to central office. And another 16%, almost $28 million, is going towards school-based services. This is actually the red piece of pie. Sorry, I flipped the colors. The dark blue is the benefits. The red is school-based services. What's a school-based service? Transportation, out-of-district tuitions, facility repairs. These are costs that we may budget for and coordinate and manage centrally, but they're direct services to students and schools. Another good one might be therapeutic services for students with disabilities. So where are our people, which is the pie on the right? 91% of our staff, they're in schools. These are the paraprofessionals, the teachers, the principals in our schools. 4% of our staff, 78 FTEs, are in central office, providing administrative support, business functions, payroll, administrative functions for transportation or safety or special education. And then the red piece of pie here, 5%, about 99 FTEs. These are school-based services staff. So these are, for example, therapeutic services. The therapist is across several schools. They may not be located in an individual school, but they're providing direct services to those schools. And so that's what's called out here. What's important to note here, the big increase in positions is we're increasing by about 60 FTEs in schools. There's a slight reduction in central office, about 2.5 FTEs, and a 4 FTE reduction in school-based services. So, our budget went up $6.5 million. Where did that $6.5 million go? The big bar there is schools. About $5 million is going directly to schools. Another $1.8 million is going to benefits. And another $500,000 is going to those school-based services we talked about, out-of-district tuitions, transportation, things like that. Well, that's more than $6.5 million, so how do we make that balance? Well, we had to reduce central office and continue our multi-year trend of reducing central office by almost $1 million. And this was, again, as the superintendent noted, these reductions included in cost savings associated with the central office lease move, with reducing also acceleration academies at the current level to a lower level for next year. So what are we paying for? So here you have the general fund budget. And really what's important to note is 81% of our budget is going towards people. We are a people-based industry. That's where 81%, 4/5 of our budget, it's going towards people, salaries and benefits. From there, we spend about $8.5 million on utilities and building maintenance. Almost $8 million, about $7.9 million going towards transportation. Out of district tuitions for students with disabilities, that's another $7.2 million. And then everything else out there, from textbooks, supplies, or materials, enrichment contracts, things like that, that's what makes up the remaining 5% for $9.2 million. Okay, well, I thought we again increased our budget by $6.5 million. Where's that going if we think about what we're paying for? No surprise, it's going mainly towards salaries and benefits. So salaries account for about $4.5 million increase. Benefits, $1.8 million increase. For benefits, the key drivers here, our pension, our required contribution to the retirement board for employees and past employees for retirement to make sure that we're fully funded. So the pension increase is about $921,000. Health insurance costs are going up about $645,000. Transportation costs, these are increasing by $1.2 million. This is again associated with, if you recall, we are busing our students to the Lawrence High School campus and also for students with disabilities. The enrollment at the high school campus over the last 3 years has gone up 7%. Our overall enrollment's gone up 10%, I said, over the last 5 years. So we're having more students here in the district. We've got to bus more students, and we have a new contract, which has gone up about 3% this current year. And so those rising costs, rising students, more buses that are needed, that's what's driving this $1.2 million increase. So for that, but then that's adding up to more than $6.5 million. What did we reduce? Again, it's in central office from the interventions or not filling vacancies and things like that. You've heard a lot today about select initiatives, and we wanted to just highlight a few of them. We are investing about $3.2 million in phase 1 of the Lawrence High School transformation. So you'd heard before, but this is not only maintaining a lot of the administrative and support staff in the upper schools, but now with a lower number of students, we're also adding new counseling and student support and family engagement support for the 9th grade academy. That adds up to this $3.2 million. We appreciated at the last meeting, the school committee brought up the preschool expansion grant. And so just to make sure we go back, what's happening with kindergarten, we've heard a lot about this. There's headlines and going back and forth with the state budget. In the governor's budget, there's a state grant called the Full Day Quality Kindergarten Grant. We've been getting this on an annual basis for a number of years. And the governor's budget was proposed to be eliminated. Now it's currently in the ping pong match with the state legislature. House is funding a portion of it. The Senate's doing something different about it. We will figure out how that's going about later. The Quality Full Day Kindergarten Grant is funding paraprofessionals in our kindergarten classroom. This is an important staffing that we want to continue. So so we have basically assumed, well, if we don't get the grant, let's make sure we're able to fund the paraprofessionals in these classrooms, and we'll make reductions elsewhere. But what's very exciting is that there is a new federal grant, and that 5 communities have received, Lawrence being one of them. That's happening in the state. That is, in Lawrence's situation, providing $2.3 million annually over the next 3 years. That's going to create almost 130 new full day, full year preschool program for students who have not been served in a preschool program before, so for 4-year-olds. This is going to start the same day as our kindergarten classrooms, but it's going to run through the year. It's an 8-hour-a-day program through the year and then through into August. So it's a full year program. It's very, very exciting. And we are coordinating with the community group and the Greater Lawrence Community Action Council, who will be running those specific programs. And so we're contracting with them. These organizations were chosen by the Department of Early Childhood Education. And so what's very exciting for us is coordinating this, sharing about and advertising about enrollment and registering students, and even be able to cross professional development with some of our other sites. And so they're trying to work and create their schedules around ours so they're able to share best practices with some of our schools. Those are a couple of the big new flashy initiatives that are happening, but I would be remiss to say, a lot of the budget is happening and continuing key initiatives that we've done in the past. We continue to fund these, from the longer day in all grades 1 through 8, to continue to do teacher leadership opportunities, whether it's a Sontag Prize or Teacher Leadership Cabinet, and finally continuing to support and invest the Family and Community Engagement Office with the new Family Resource Center and improving our centralized enrollment process. So what's happening going forward? So we have a City Council budget hearing next week. That happens in May. Then the City Council will be voting and taking action on the mayor's budget in June. The state legislature and the governor at some point will finalize their budget. Ideally, it would happen before June. It probably ends up happening more in the middle of July. And so then grant allocations that we'll be receiving from the state and federal government, we usually are informed of these between June and August. But the new fiscal year will be starting July 1. And so we have provided to you, and I think it was mentioned by the superintendent, a new revised budget book. And I want to thank again this body for continuing to push us on providing more information. And I think we wanted to, you probably actually see some of the charts and graphs that we've shared with you, information that you've asked for. We've tried to include in here, for example, like homeless student ridership historically. And so what's really helpful is, again, you continue to push, say, like, the public would be interested in hearing about this. Can you provide this? And we want to provide, though, more of a sense of not just what's a number in, or just financial numbers, but give a more complete picture about what's happening in the district and what's happening at our schools. So you'll see that there's different sections here in the budget book from, again, reiterating what is our vision for students, our 4 pillars, to what's happening with our academic progress to date, both at a district level and also at the high school level. Having a revenue section talking about what's happening with state aid and the impact, and trying to get people to understand net school spending and grant revenue. Talking at a high level about what's happening with expenditures. And also enrollment, historically what's been happening with enrollment. It's going to be a continuing issue that we get to talk to you about. And then finally, try to provide more in-depth comprehensive school profile pages. So you'll see basically 2 pages for each school. One is that shows historical demographic, enrollment, attendance, and performance information for every single school. But then also budget information at sort of a high level of category. This may not be to the detail that everyone would like it to be, but it's meant to show large buckets from salaries and stipends and benefits to educational and operational expenses and utilities and maintenance. And then also in there, there's also staffing information too. So this is, again, it's you have hard copies in front of you. It's available on our website, and we look forward to continuing this conversation with you. And so with that, do you have any other comments? With that, I want to turn over for questions.
Anybody have any questions to jump off?
Mr. Mayor?
Mrs. Mariano.
Thank you. Seth, I reviewed this, and I just have a question. Could you turn to page 14 in your budget book, please?
Great, you know the page.
The FTEs at the bottom, the reoccurring grants, these, at the schools, there's a negative 12.8, and then a +1, and, a 0. That doesn't come out to the 17.2. Is there, can you explain that?
Ms. Mariano, I want to thank you for pointing out the one error that's in the entire budget book that was noticed earlier today. I appreciate that. You can circle it in red, and we can go back and do it again.
You want to be on record as the one?
There's one, and she found it, so thank you.
And you know what? I'm looking at it right now, and if you do the subtraction, the 129.5 minus the 111, it does come out to the 18.2. I'm sorry. If I had seen that sooner, I wouldn't have asked the question.
No, it's okay. Thank you for pointing out. Yeah, so we flipped it, so it should be, instead of 12.8, it should be 18.2.
18.2. All right, and just something else, on page 16, I noticed that the operating expenses and the educational expenses show a reduction. Now, I'm just curious, with the projected increase in enrollment, how can the educational expenses, be it materials for the schools and everything, how can that be reduced, and where is that reduction coming, where is it happening, as well as the operating expenses?
These reductions are happening in many of the central office accounts. We've tried to reduce to make sure that any sort of supply or contract that we're doing is at the middle, it should be lower. So we've brought back, we've reduced back, for example, contractual services for legal services or anything else there, and also some of the school-based services. So
what account, would that come under, would that be in your operating or not the educational expenses?
in both. So maybe we may have paid for something centrally for along educational expenses or materials, and we've said, well, let's eliminate that if it's not needed, or not, everything may be desired, but it's not necessary compared to what should be funding and trying to increase the amount for schools.
Okay, so the schools, I just, going back with the principal's hat, you never have enough supplies in the buildings, and you hate for teachers to say, I don't have enough paper, I don't have enough of this, I don't have enough of that. And that just, when I saw that reduction, that really concerned me, because I really wanted to make sure that all the schools have everything that they need as far as educational materials.
This is actually looking quickly, and
I couldn't, to be honest with you, I looked quickly, and I couldn't find where that reduction was coming from.
it's actually in operating expenses, all of it and even more is coming from central office.
All of that total is coming?
Yeah, and school-based services. Those are all going down even more than the 444,000.
And again,
cited
that
here.
includes the materials, that account, that materials account?
Yep.
Textbooks and things like that, the schools will have enough.
Yeah, the schools they're in the process of prioritizing that, and so we may not be showing like textbook line items, but they're the ones going through and trying to figure out whether they want to spend more on textbooks or new academic services that are happening, and the prices are coming in maybe lower than they thought. Maybe want to move savings around, so that's what's happening for schools.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Payano.
Just on that point, I still don't understand. So where exactly, so this is educational expenses, like I'm looking at his textbooks, photocopiers, whatever. You're saying it's coming from central office, so what exactly is being removed from there?
We can look back and go back to try to find more greater detail to let you know what's happening in educational expenses for the reductions.
My guess is a chunk of it is the math textbook adoption we did over 2 years, the previous 2 years, which obviously we're not doing again at the high school level. But we'll get back to you with that information.
Just real quick, just for clarification, the what book?
Yeah.
Math textbook adoption we did.
What is that?
The high school teachers did a math textbook adoption, which was phased in over 2 years.
I'd also be interested just to know how much we're spending on textbooks, because I know in the past, since I've been on the school committee, there's always been an issue about students having sufficient textbooks to take home, and teachers buying their own books. And I always, even though the issue is still always there, even though we see the numbers, I think it's always nice to see that that info there, which is like one of the things that I've found. I love all the information that's there. It's nice, a little overwhelming, but it's nice for it to be there. But little things like that, that I usually could get right offhand, find out what it is, I'm not exactly finding here. But just a few questions just about sort of like the format. You have teachers and instructional coaches kind of put together. I know instructional coaches are, it's just all in all the pages. They're all there. Instructional coaches are helping teachers come up with curriculum, helping them through that. Are they also, just because, I like to find out like how many teachers are actually within that school teaching the students in a classroom?
So I think you're highlighting on a good point where instructional coaches are used in oftentimes very different ways depending on the school. So sometimes you may have an instructional coach who may be teaching part-time, they may be co-teaching, or they may be completely out of the classroom and just doing straight coaching for the school. And they're all part of the Lawrence Teachers Union. They're sort of one group, and that's why we try to bucket them together into one category here in this line.
Okay. What about with paraprofessionals and parent liaisons?
Again, it's a similar situation. It's part of the same union here, and so we have grouped this together. But usually, most of these lines for paraprofessionals and parent liaisons, the vast majority are usually paraprofessionals.
Say it again one more time, sorry.
Most of the FTEs in this line item are usually paraprofessionals.
Okay. So someone like me who would be interested in knowing how many parent liaisons are in that specific building, how would I know? Because it seems like I completely understand with this, once you said instructional coaches and teachers, if you're having if 2/3 of the buildings are using instructional coaches and teachers as part-time, it makes sense to put them both together. But with parent liaisons and paraprofessionals, it seems like it's two different roles. And I'd just be interested myself in knowing how many parent liaisons we have in the buildings, and this is one of the ways that when I'm going to visit a school, one of the things I look at is like the previous year or to get an idea.
Yeah, and sometimes what will happen is schools may use parent liaisons and paraprofessionals interchangeably, but we can pull together a list of where the parent liaisons are by school for you.
And there's a differentiation in paraprofessionals as well, security paras, traditional paras, one-to-one paras. But we're happy to get you more of that information. What I would say is I think some of the schools are still finalizing how they're going to use their paras and different folks based on the schedules they're making. So that might be something that we could bring to you in the fall when they've kind of really finalized it.
And just two questions, well, it means one question, just if you can define what academic support and talent services are?
Page are you on, Mr. Brown?
Page 19, 20.
19 to 20?
Well, I mean, those are the two pages I'm looking at right now, but academic support is on page 19. Towards the bottom, town services.
Okay. So I would encourage you to flip to page 78. So we provided some of the central office detail in the back, and so you'll see a description of some of the different services and the departments, and this is in the category of school support. So this is where academic advising and coaching and professional development in the academic support category is happening for that we're providing centrally for schools. In terms of talent services, this is managing district-wide talent programs like the Sontag Prize, like Teacher Leadership Cabinet, or the Advanced and Master Educator Program. That's what's happening in the Talent Services Department. And recruitment for teachers, and things like that.
Okay, so talent services, and maybe I'll talk to you afterwards, because it's just, you just named 5 or 6 different things within that one specific line item. All right.
A lot of our people do multiple things, and so I don't want to shortchange that they do a lot of different work. So that's what's happening in the talent services, and academic support is where they're doing a lot of coaching of principals and academic advising and providing sort of holistic support directly to schools, whether it's around certain programs like English language learners or just in general academic support that's happening.
Anyone else? Student Lopez.
Could we possibly get a copy of this PowerPoint like we did with the previous one you showed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mr. Blatchford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple questions. So for a capital budget, do we have one? Do we plan to have one? And if so, what does it include?
So the capital budget, we have talked earlier about how with an increasing enrollment, we want to take a look at our facility needs and think about if additional school buildings are needed, but want to work closely with the mayor to figure out what would be an appropriate capital budget in terms of both facility repairs that are needed, renovations that are needed, or new space. We are hoping to engage an architectural firm to help support some of this work over the summer, and want to come back to you later this fall in coordination with the mayor's office to figure out what is an appropriate capital budget over the long term. Usually with capital budgets, they come 5 years or 10 years. And we want to be thoughtful about this and work with the different schools and figure out like what are their specific needs and and take our time with that versus we could just do a quick version of like, hey, here's all the boiler costs or things like that and just give it to you, but it's not really real. So we didn't want to do that. But we did, as part of the mayor's appropriation, he does have a sort of a capital reserve pay-go capital amount. These are for sort of ongoing repairs that are happening, like somewhat major renovations, like paving a parking lot, or doing some of the work outside of a building, HVAC repairs, things like that. But that's what that will go towards. But it's not in the capital budget, which I think you might be alluding to, which is like major renovations, major roof replacements, things like that.
Yeah.
Can I also say that aside from the firm that's going to help us come look at space and what we need, our facilities department is currently in the process of assessing the damage from the winter, specifically around concrete and pavement and some issues we've had. We've had to cordon off some different areas of different schools because of the damage to some of the cement. And so we're in the process of getting that information as well.
Yeah. And I would just add to that as a department, the school department doesn't have its own capital improvement plan. It's actually the city's capital improvement plan, and that will be part of what's going on with the city's overseer from the state.
So in the slides, you showed us the amount of benefits and the amount of salaries and all that going up. And we have to pay for transportation, which is going up. We have to pay for benefits, which is going up, unless we want to fire teachers, which we don't want to do, because we have too many kids. And that adds to the transportation cost. So where can we reduce further without cutting to the bone, I guess is the question. And in that, pulling in the capital budget portion of it, what are we doing around energy savings? What are we doing around solar or wind, if any? And long term, can we do savings enough on that where that can be the place we reduce because we don't have to pay for this anymore? And now we can, if we lose 9C cut money, can we take that savings and put it into salaries and benefits and transportation?
So let me just, the second part of yours first. In terms of energy savings, we've been fortunate. Chris Merlino has sort of kept his eye out there to see what savings are out there. And I think earlier this year did a lighting replacement fixtures to get some savings there. But oftentimes that's actually what goes into capital improvement plans, about like, hey, let's invest in this because actually the long term is going to save you significantly more in ESCO projects. So we're looking forward to rolling that into the capital plan. In terms of, you're highlighting a huge issue here, which is we are significantly dependent on state aid. And when state aid, the per pupil amount that we receive for students goes up 1-2% a year, but benefits are going to go up higher, salaries are going to go up higher, transportation goes up more than that. I'm not sure what organization that spends 81% of its budget on people can stay within 1 or 2%. So this is a real concern, and we've been very fortunate that we have found any sort of possible savings pot that we can find centrally. We continue to figure out, can we find other savings? Can we reduce costs centrally? Can we provide services in a more efficient way to give schools and preserve schools the flexibility? And our schools have been great about also being very proactive with the support of some central office personnel, like Dr. Toomey here, who's been advocating for different grants like extended learning time grants, 21st century grants that go to schools and provide a multi-year funding. But long term, it really comes down to what is the state aid formula for the state. And there is a foundation budget review commission out there that's taken a look at it, and I think we've highlighted some of the issues that we talked about at the last meeting about how, hey, look, they're looking at enrollment in October 1, and that's what's going to drive next year's enrollment. And that's really tough when you have an increasing enrollment population.
Can I say about that, the foundation budget review is a critical process that's happening right now. We sent in testimony. We've talked to folks about that because the way the foundation budget used to work is that cities used to get more than traditional towns, and over the years that has flip-flopped. And so we really need to be advocates for the change in formula to be positive for cities, in my opinion. And I hope that folks on this committee would help us to advocate on Beacon Hill and other places when this change is going to happen, or as the process takes place.
So on that caveat of utilities, the Greater Lawrence Technical School now is, I believe, 100% powered by solar. And in fact, their clock is turning back, as it were, in the sense of they're actually distributing energy back to the city, and I believe to Andover, however the grid works. I don't expect us to buy a solar field, but I think that collaboration, obviously, with the city and with the other high school that we have, I think would be good, very beneficial for us in that sense, because if we can eliminate that utility cost, as it were, and we can actually not make money but have savings, I think they're one school in comparison to the amount of schools we have, and I'm not saying that we're ever going to start turning the clock back on energy when it comes to savings, but I think that if we can work towards that goal, and I think if that's a portion of the capital improvement plan, Mr. Mayor, I think that's where we can start not cutting as deeply as we have been cutting in the past few years, because it's detrimental, I think, or it can become detrimental.
I agree. I just like the idea of being more proactive on these things. I think when we first came in, 3 years ago, the budget we were in a little bit better shape. There was a lot of the federal money that was still there. We actually got a waiver from the state to use some school money to do some fixing of facilities, which typically are city costs, but the money wasn't there at the time from the city side, so we did that. We are in a situation now where I don't think we have any of that fat to use to fix it, and with the growing enrollment, we've got to really be thoughtful and proactive, as you would say, about any means necessary to save dollars.
Just two more questions. So Sontag, how do you say it?
Sontag.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it is a nonprofit program that we say, hey, come in and educate our kids over this weeks, or is it like programming that we're using from them, or?
So we use donations from the Lynch Foundation, who pays for things like the trophies and the dinner and the professional development at Harvard, as well as we use funding from the school system. 80% of the teachers, or maybe more, of the Sontag winners are actually Lawrence Public School teachers. The other folks are from across the state or even across the country, much smaller number. And the foundation picks up those costs because they're not our employees, but it's always beneficial, and I think it's become kind of a national award where folks, and very competitive to get in, where great folks come into the district here, work with our kids for a week. Several of those people have actually, because they've loved our kids so much, have now matriculated to this district and now teach. And so it's become, as well as just a great way to recognize teachers and to give kids that need extra help great instruction, it's also become kind of a recruiting tool for us to show our district off. And we've been blessed to have the support of the Lynch Foundation.
And I guess the final question is, I guess it would be back to my old shtick of what I've been asking for the last 4 years. I appreciate thoroughly the amount of information that we've gotten from you guys. I think that I think Mary Lou's absolutely correct that this was what the budget looked like prior to receivership, and I think that that's good in the sense of we're not going backwards. But I think that there is so much more that we can do as a system. The first two people who asked questions before me asked questions that if we had a line item budget, we would have had the answers and the questions wouldn't have been asked. I think that it shows a level of transparency that I think we can strive for. And I think if you look at other districts, like I said last year, if you look at Lincoln Sudbury, if you look at Newton, if you look at all these other systems, they have a line item budget. And people can say, you know what, this is what they're doing right and this is what they're doing wrong. All we can say is, these are our demographics, this is where we spend our money in bulk, and what is that special detail, that the educational expense. We had talked about Playworks, we had talked about administration from the charter schools. I think that knowing what that money is, and it's not going to benefit us in any way, shape, or form. You guys have me on this system. I was not a believer in the sense of that receivership could actually do good when they first started, and I think that we've proven that that's not true. And I think that receivership has done a lot of good in this system. And I think that having that open and transparency, part of it, I think, just sells it one more level, because you can have all the naysayers, myself included, being that this is terrible, look at it, they're not showing us, they don't care, and I think you can bust the doors wide open, there's no questions from us in the sense of what is this money being spent on, why is it not being spent on this way, yada, yada, yada. It becomes that nitty-gritty stuff that's, if we're arguing over that, then we've solved every problem in the world. If we're arguing over you should be spending this much more on books and this much more on toner, then how much are you spending on salaries and how much are you spending on transportation? And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really appreciate that, Mr. Blatchford. I think, we really have endeavored to provide more and more detail, and as Dr. Bergeron said, I think it's comparable to what it used to be before receivership. I think we can do better. I also think that we need to kind of give our individual schools a little bit of time to work this process out, and so they can really dive down in a deeper way on the lines. And I think we're going to get there. It might take us a little bit of time, but each year we want to do better. That's my goal, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form. I'm not sure we have the money that the Lincoln Sudburys and Concords and Westons have, so I've got to be practical and realistic about that. But I think we've done a good job tonight, and I think we're going to do better in the future. And listen, we appreciate the feedback. I mean, I think the reason we never disbanded this organization is because we felt like we needed to hear honest feedback from folks. And very candidly, Mr. Blatchford, you are a driver of why we've been able to give more feedback, and so you should take some credit for that. You and I don't always agree on everything, but there is a large part of me that feels like there has to be a system of checks and balances in this world.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, I agree with a lot of what my colleagues have said, that we are getting more information, not at the level yet, but I mean, we're getting there. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Now looking at the page 16 and talking about the general funds, when we talk about the account 5300, purchase services, and we see that that's still not on red, and the other ones, which is more important to me, I believe, educational expenses, that's kind of like, it threw me off because, I mean, I don't know how you split everything, because on that account, the 5300, on the back, you only explained field trips for each school, and that doesn't add up to $1 million. But over here, we have $17 million and an increasement of 10%.
Sure.
I mean, I don't get it. Can we get a little bit more?
Yeah,
more
I mean, I think,
details on that?
purchase services are often a reflection of special education costs, which are, it's the law. It's whatever a child that comes into our district is deemed to need for services, they get. And so if it's an out-of-district placement, whether that's a $50,000 out-of-district placement or even higher, we legally have to pay it. And we almost are handcuffed. We have no choice in the matter. That's federal law. And so many districts sometimes, including some nearby districts, have been hamstrung recently by an unanticipated number of students that come into their district needing these profound services. And so it can throw a district's budget out of whack if that happens, which is happening, I think, in some nearby communities right now. And so it's hard for us because we can't always anticipate what that number is going to be, but based on students that have entered in the district and the IEPs that follow them from their previous district, or when a meeting takes place and the team agrees to these services, we are legally obligated to pay it. And out-of-district tuition is something that is, it's a high number, and when you say the words out-of-district, I mean, there's a cost to that. We try to do what we can to keep our kids educated inside our district, because we think we have great people who can do that, but there are instances where kids do need something else beyond what we can offer.
So of this $17 million line here in purchase services, $15 million accounts for out-of-district tuitions, which Superintendent Riley just mentioned, and transportation. You add those two together, it's 15 of the 17 million. The other contracts, this is enrichment contracts or other providers that we bring in, ultimately add up to the remaining 2 million. But the vast majority in this line is those two costs right there.
Can we get a little bit of details on those as well?
Sure.
If possible.
Yeah, we can have that for your next meeting.
Ms. Ortiz.
I have a few questions. So going back to the 5,300, so that I can start where I left off with looking through this. With the 5,300, it's lined in the schools as field trips. And so let's say if we're looking at Spark Academy field trips, $60,000, Partham field trip, $26,000.
Pardon me, can you just tell us what page you're working off of?
56 and 54. Like if I'm just because that's in front of me. But then Up Academy field trip, 1,700, and then there are schools that have 0, and then field trips of 108,000 at Up Academy Oliver. So should it say purchase services instead of field trips? Because where are these kids going that it's $108,000 for them to go there? I want a chaperone.
Which school are you referring to?
If we look at page 60, at Up Academy. So you see 5,300 right under educational expenses?
Yep.
So if we look at Up Academy, just look at and we're looking at field trip, it says 108. Should that say purchase services on page 60?
Yeah, it's the same category. I think this is like one of the few lines here. The vast majority of 5,300 in every single school is field trips, so we try to provide that detail of like, it's really just providing field trips or transportation services for enrichment activities. So I think like Arlington Middle might be on here for like $50,000. That doesn't mean it's $50,000.
Whereas the Gilmet K through 4 is on for 0.
Yeah, and so the cost there could be in their ELT, in their 21st Century Grant, maybe paying for some of the transportation costs. So those multi-year one-time grants don't necessarily show up in this budget here, in this line, if that makes sense.
Clarify that a little bit.
Sure.
I'm a little sick.
Some schools have different
Ways
programs for their expanded learning time. So
And they're funded differently.
some some
Okay.
schools will go to the Boys and Girls Club. Some
Yep.
schools will do all their expanded learning time in-house.
Mhm.
They don't take a bus anywhere, but
Right.
the Arlington is taking buses all the time.
Yeah, theirs is very big.
YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, what have you. Now, so we know different schools have different trips that they take or don't take. Now, the money, how we pay for that, some of that is on this budget, but some of it might be on, some of our schools have these ELT grants, which, by the way, we're hoping to continue. Please call Senator L'Italian and other folks. And they go on those grant lines, so they don't show up.
So they don't show up on that line. So if I'm looking, I shouldn't be alarmed when I see 108,000 going to Up Academy and 0 going to the Gilmet. It's just because
Probably on a different line. Yeah,
it's on a different line.
I almost guarantee that's the case.
Yep.
And so, can I continue?
Ms. Ortiz, yes.
Thank you. So then, let's go back to what Mrs. Mariano had highlighted, the 5,500 line. So for educational expenses, I see at Up Academy, 179,000 last year, and it's 34,000 this year for a change of 144. Is that savings? Is that a loss?
They're not doing this.
If you remember Up Academy, this is Up Academy Oliver, we're still on page 60.
60,
Yeah.
yes.
It's been in the process of taking over a school, so they had some higher initial upfront costs.
Okay.
So now that they have taken over the school, that number should be reduced.
They also have, this is, wow,
Wow.
louder. We all waking up now. Up Academy Oliver also receives a multi-year SRG grant, and so this is going into the second year of it. So one of these things this is reflecting is potentially a shift in costs onto the grant that they're assuming. So maybe there was a cost they were doing on the general fund that they're now going to pay for on the grant, because the cost of their general fund budget for staff increases is going up, so they would rather move some of this money onto the SRG grant. Or maybe there were some one-time costs that we're doing on the SRG grant this year that they're not going to continue next year, so they can move this money over there.
If you could walk with me to page 19.
19?
Yep. So is the line item here for South Lawrence East telling me that there is no more South Lawrence East?
So South Lawrence East Middle School has
Yeah.
been phasing out,
Right,
while Spark has been phasing up.
okay,
So this year, currently, we have South Lawrence East Middle School is one grade, 8th grade.
right.
Next year, Spark will take that 8th grade, and South Lawrence East Middle School as a entity will be no more. Spark will just have those kids.
And so with the variance,
Make sense?
yeah, it totally does. So Spark Academy next year will be what we knew as South Lawrence East Middle.
Right, with one exception. That is, instead of being South Lawrence East Middle used to be 5 through 8.
Yep.
Spark Academy is going to be 6 through 8.
6 through 8.
South Lawrence East Elementary is going to take 5th grade.
K through
K through,
5,
it used to be K to 4, now it's, next year it's going to be K to 5,
which is a good move.
which is good. And also because of Spark Academy requires extra gym space. And so to have 4 grades, we're not sure we could get kids through the program, whereas with only 3 grades, we can accommodate the gym space. So it just is more of a natural fit.
And so with that phasing, I'm looking at staffing. Does that mean that negative 26, meaning those FTEs are no longer? That we fired 26
No.
teachers?
No,
So,
they've been displaced. Many of them, some of them are going to South Lawrence East Elementary School to the 5th grade. Some are going to other schools across the district.
So what you're actually, what's important to note is if you look, South Lawrence East Elementary is going up by 9 FTEs. Spark Academy is
It's
going
going
up
on 10 by
11,
9.
so that's
Yeah.
about 20.
Yep.
And so the remaining 6 positions, this is what kind of happens when you have 3 administrations over 3 different schools. So there are some efficiencies there, but we're very fortunate that with some turnover, that we have very talented staff at South Lawrence East Middle, and they're able to support other schools.
So 6 are gone.
So some will go to Partham
Di-
Middle School to teach
different-
7th grade math or something like
Yeah.
that, yeah. The only exception would be if a teacher was either non-renewed or terminated for performance. I don't have that information in front of me, but I think the vast majority of folks
Okay,
are
so
either
I
being
shouldn't be alarmed
absorbed
with that
into those 2
negative 20s.
schools or
So-
are being displaced to another school inside the district.
So they're just being reorged?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I continue?
Yeah, go ahead. Floor still
And
yours.
so, thank you. Phoenix Academy, I see a negative 75,000 in the budget there, and I know that there was a big negative number somewhere else for Phoenix. How's that going there? How do we
So,
justify that?
We projected an enrollment for Phoenix.
Here it is.
For dropouts and for how many kids they were going to get back. They have got a significant number of kids back, but they have not met their number. And so we wanted to right-size their budget this year based on their trends. We're fair people, but we're not going to pay to have more teachers or more whatever in a school that doesn't have the kids that warrant that amount of money. So we're just kind of right-sizing that a little bit right now. Does that make sense? If they were, they might have been budgeted last year because we thought they were going to get 200 kids.
Okay.
Maybe they got 120. Okay, we're going to budget you for 120.
So last year, if we're looking at page 70, under educational expense for Phoenix, it was 79, or 80, let's just round it, 80, and now it's 13.
Yeah.
So how many kids do we really have going to Phoenix?
Well, I just would caution you about educational expenses a little bit different because that's, again, this was a program that started
Right.
recently.
Yep.
And so they had some more startup costs at the beginning.
Okay, and they don't have as many now.
Right, and so whether that's furniture, textbooks, whatever, there's stuff there. And so that number should go down, as it will at other programs that we've started.
And I think this also, again, highlights one of the challenges of trying to report in the middle of a planning process
Yep.
is that as Phoenix Academy sort of revisits and looks at some of their staffing, there may be savings that allow them to increase or change different non-salary accounts. But the assumption here for this budget as it is right now in this book is that the staffing is still the same level and the salaries are going up at this projected rate, but there may be some turnover, there may be some savings that allow it to go to non-salaries and things like that.
When we're looking at the costs for education, are we looking at, I'm trying to figure out my notes because I just write it down as I think and it's all like this. Are we looking into ebooks and e-learning in any way and incorporating some online academic classes as keeping in trend with our other counterparts, allowing our kids to do online classes? And that would also, in my opinion, if we're having e-learning and ebooks and doing it like that, is that not a cost savings and then keeping our kids current?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been looking district-wide at technology. I mean, I can just give you an example of, we did an online AP Physics course because it was cost savings, it was easy, and it didn't require us to hire a full-time teacher, which we couldn't justify, but it got the kids what they needed. As we figure out if we're moving towards PARC, which is the replacement of MCAS,
remember.
perhaps. And that no decision will be made on that until the fall. They're doing a lot of working groups. If that does happen, PARC is generally, while PARC can be administered paper and pencil, its long-term goal is to be administered via the computer.
Right.
And so I think we're going to have to look at a serious technological upgrade in this district. Whether that happens is still kind of up for debate right now. I will tell you, breaking news is that the PARC just cut down on the amount of testing and the number of tests that they're going to give. I think to make it more palatable to everyone. It's, as my own children are going through this PARC thing, it's been a lot of PARC testing.
Okay.
So whether that turns out to be the case or not, I think we need to look more into technology and looking at everything from Khan Academy to different online learning options. What I would have told you 3 or 4 years ago was that everyone thought that online technology was ready to go and that it was really high quality, and I don't think that was the case. Right now, we're starting to see more high quality options for online, and I mean, this has been I've been waiting for this for 10 years, so I think you will see us pivoting that way.
I think that I appreciate that answer because if we're getting our kids, if we're looking toward their 4 years and getting college ready, when they enter, whether it's a 2-year community college or a 4-year college, they're taking online classes right off the jump.
That's correct.
They're doing that. And so it would, in order to ensure their success, and then looking at the bottom line item, incorporating that into our feasibility of technology and IT, it's something that warrants all areas when we're preparing them and when we're trying to save money some way and still give the best education possible. The last thing, speaking to Mr. Blatchford's question on capital improvements, I was at a neighborhood association meeting last night, and the neighbors that live around the Rollins School were asking, I don't know who was there. I think the representative was actually Wendy Lusson from the mayor's office. What's going on with the roof over there, that shingles are falling into their yard again where things were fine before and not fine now. So I think that that warrants looking at. I know that the capital improvements that we have are based on whatever the city council and what we can squeeze out for that. But I think there's been some serious wear and tear on there, especially because it's a historic building. and keeping it in that historic, but also the repair. I know there have been repairs to that roof before, and I just, as an FYI, wanted to share that, what came out of yesterday, because it's appropriate to, as far as we're talking about expenses.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz.
Thank you so much.
Anybody not spoken want to speak?
Could I?
Mr. Blatchford, and then Mrs.
Thank you.
Mariano.
I guess quick couple of questions. This is less of a question. Seth, you and I spoke about transportation and cost, and obviously that's been a question here about why the rising of it. We, just so everyone knows, that we did have to renew our contract with Reading, North Reading Transportation, I believe it is, and the cost did go up. Do we know how much by?
About a 3% cost of living adjustment.
So that, as you guys have seen in the past, that's one of the transportation questions. Level 5. So we're level 5. When that's done, that means we're not level 5 anymore, and that we've improved. And Seth and I had this conversation about when you improve and you do better, you get less money. So,
Well,
yeah, that's.
well, let me be clear about this. While level 4 schools are eligible to get SRG grants, these 3-year grants that, term out and expire, level 5 districts, there was no additional money attached to that, which has been a personal grievance that I've had. But your point is not, is noted, which is typically districts that are lower performing are the ones that get more resources. I think we're going to try to work on a plan to make sure that we continue getting our resources and getting what we need. And whether that's for advocating for a foundation budget that works for cities and towns, or doing private fundraising from philanthropy, or getting cost savings where we need to get them through solar or other energy efficiency ways. I mean, I think we need to make sure the district is a place where it can be sustained and continue to do well. The fact that we are no longer the lowest performing district in Massachusetts, we're not even in the bottom 10% anymore, is just a huge testament to the teachers and the families and this board. But I think we can do better, and I think we need to do better. I think our kids deserve just a great educational experience. So we need to track that in the coming days. If and when the state decides that receivership is coming to an end, there has to be serious discussions between City Hall, the school committee, and other partners in Lawrence to make sure that we keep the positive momentum going.
The reason I mentioned that is because when I was asking my questions to Seth, I said, "Oh, what were the grants that level 1 schools got?" And his answer was nothing. So my fear is that when the city does get control back, we then have to be the bad guys who have to cut even further, and then it's that whole cyclical thing that, oh, you're cutting funding and now the school's doing worse.
Yeah, I don't think so. Just because there is no additional money for level 5 schools and all the level 4 money will have gone away. So I don't think that's going to be a big issue. The bigger issue, in my opinion, is this foundation budget issue where, again, my opinion, cities have not been given the proper share in comparison to some of their wealthier counterparts.
But I do want to highlight one of the things we talked about at our meeting was that a few of our schools receive extended learning time and 21st century extended learning time grants. And while these may be bound by some time limits, the state actually says that they're willing to extend those timelines and have additional years for exceptional schools. And so I think one way of potentially extending some of that funding is and embedding it in receivership is we have fantastic school leaders who are doing incredible work that is like a model for the state. And we have other leaders who are putting in additional grants for them to be funded for these grants. Like the Hennessy here, if there was a write-in campaign, I would be lobbying everyone to write in for that. But the work that Ethel is doing at the Hennessy, like hopefully we get funded for that, and that will continue on. So we are, I think, optimistic that, look, if when funding goes to some of these schools and they don't want to pull back and they see these as exceptional sites, they're going to continue to fund them. So I have confidence our school leaders are going to, shock the state.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little less confident that people will see the cost of success and want to pay it. So I think we do have to plan for both scenarios. Was that your last one?
Just one last question.
Thanks.
Rent on, so currently we're doing Phoenix out of the Everett Mills, and then we're also doing Our Lady of Good Counsel, whatever school we're calling that now. Is that, where is that in the budget, just so I can identify it on my own? In the sense of like, what is that line item for the?
It's in 5900, the utilities and maintenance line in the different schools, and the Family Resource Center is paid for centrally for that cost.
And then the school that was created out of the lack of essentially classrooms for the Bruce, where is that in the budget? Like, what is that under?
It should be the same thing, the Lawrence Family Public Academy.
Okay. Sorry, I just didn't know the name, and I was.
Yeah, no, it's fine. You'll see this on page 28 in line 5900 under utilities and maintenance. That would seem like a very high amount for just utilities. The lease is in that cost right there.
Gotcha. And how long is that lease for as of right now? Do we?
We have 2 more years on that lease.
Yeah, okay.
They're all 3-year leases, and in that situation, we have 2 more.
Gotcha. And for Phoenix?
We have 1 more year.
Okay.
On that lease.
Great. Thank you.
Mrs. Mariano.
Yes, I'm going to go back to transportation. Last time we spent a great deal of time talking about the transportation of the children that are homeless, and we received information in our transmittal last week. Could you give us an update on the, you talked about that at the state level there was some talk about the McKinney-Vento law. Do you have any updates on that as far as how it's going to impact the transportation here?
So I haven't heard any necessarily update specifically about the administration of the McKinney-Vento and the placement of students. But in part of their budget conversations, one of the line items that sort of goes up and down depending on who's submitting a budget is partial reimbursement for cities and towns and school districts on this cost. So we're hopeful that maybe there will be a way for us to get at least some reimbursement, or probably a small amount, but some reimbursement for these costs. And in the long term, we really hope that the state works to better administer this program and make sure that these kids are located closer to their original community versus an hour-and-a-half drive away.
Right.
Well, there's been nothing on, I've heard nothing either on the McKinney-Vento part of it. I would say, backing up a few steps, the governor has been very clear that he has concerns about the number of folks that we're housing in these hotels all across the state.
Yep.
When kids could be at a much lower rate placed in apartments in their hometown. And so I'm not sure exactly what the plans are, but that was something he talked about a lot on the campaign stop, where, we've got a lot of kids that, could actually be housed in Lawrence instead of in Waltham at a cheaper rate than paying for the hotel and the transportation. And so I think they're going to be actively pursuing that.
Thank you.
Final question, Ms. Ortiz.
I just have one question. With Lawrence Family Public Academy, it just came back to me. I had the pleasure of reading to the children over there. They're very energetic, to say the least. I thought I was reading to a class, and I read to the whole school. That was the most intimidating audience I've ever had. But I see that they're also having a variance and a negative, and I just wanted to highlight that I was in their library, and they really need books, appropriate books for their age, and I think appropriate books for the time that we're in. It was great for me to read a little golden book with, I think it's Cinderella, and she lost her glass slipper, and she's blonde, and she's blue dress, and it's all great, but they need books that when they read, it looks like them, and it tells the story of now, and that's my observation of being there. I don't know how we as a board will support, or how even just the other elementary schools can support in having a book drive for the school. And partnering. I think part of our success is the fact that we have community partners, and I think schools need to partner with other schools that are in need, and Lawrence Family Public Academy is in need of books. There's no books on their shelves, and for what they do have, it's, yeah, Cinderella should save him. I'm not going to be a feminist in this, but I'm just saying.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
We agree.
So there's opportunity there for us as a community to partner with this school and to have a book drive on their behalf by all elementary. I know that we did a book drive at the Frost for the Frost kids, and then they did an exchange or whatever, and maybe something can go toward that.
We agree.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. My final comment on this, on the budget thing, is I think that what you're hearing is, people are going to do the math on their own. So it's important for things to balance out on the paper so people don't have questions about the way things are being, is something being moved and inappropriately positioned. Given our history here, people get concerned around those things. And I would just encourage folks to, because we went through this at the city council level too, have the minutia roll up neatly into the large bucket so that you can say that, you can follow that line all the way down to transportation is in this bucket, it's also in that bucket, that way through. And if I'm just reading it on my own, I can come to that decision. One of the things that became kind of clear in this conversation is I'm not really sure we have a full understanding of the number of partner-run schools versus city-run schools. And I'd like to see what that looks like.
Will do.
Okay, considering, how much, and you could do it by grade as opposed to by building. I think in our heads, we all think about buildings. I think people might be surprised that the Oliver School is actually at the old high school, in this building, right? So I think instead of doing it by school and do it by grades, that's helpful. But yeah, I mean, everybody else across the state, we bring our taxes up every year, 2.5%. The state doesn't do that. They're flat, and they want to actually go backwards. So that's the environment that we're in. Unless you guys have anything else.
Okay. We're going to move quickly to others so that we can move to public participation and then get to
Just one
executive
quick
session.
question. I think Committee Member Payano had a question about the Acceleration Academy that you might have missed. Sorry.
Yeah, my apologies. Just a quick question with the document that was handed to us. It has nothing to do with the budget. It's the Acceleration Academies.
Yep.
Up Academy Leonard, it was 64% of the students' attendance. So is it just that the students in Up Academy need like less help, or is it like did something go on? Because it just seems compared to, I mean, even 75%, but 64% compared to the other schools that were participating, it just seems really low.
We would agree. We have made a practice of funding things that are executed really well. There may be the case that because that particular school has a tremendous amount of expanded learning time, that this was not, that this was not pushed as hard as it needed to be at the school level with the kids. But you can rest assured that we'll be diving in with any schools that we didn't find to have high attendance rates. I mean, we have children, a wait list of kids that want to do this program, right? We've tried to make it really exciting for kids. The Lynch people have donated prizes, and so we view those seats as precious. And it's hard for me in this budget, just to be clear, to say that we're reducing those seats because we only have so much money right now. We hope that when the final budget comes out, we have more money and we can restore those seats. But please know that we find these seats to be really precious. And so when you're not over 90%, I'm going to have questions.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to try to transition us quickly. I just wanted to note in folks' packets I believe you got the Ed Week magazine where Lawrence was featured as the front page article. That's a nice article. The May graduation is Sunday, May 31st at high noon. I will be bringing my sunblock. The August graduation is scheduled for August 6th at 5 p.m. That's for students who may need to make up classes through summer school or whatnot. Folks are invited to that as well. I know there's one more item the mayor wanted to present about central office before we move to any further questions and public participation.
So if you looked at your agenda, there's an item on executive session 7 that's going to be on later on this evening about the proposal for LPS central office and about an ongoing litigation matter. We're going to do an executive session. But I think it's important to start off not with this, but with the other slide, the other one. The presentation that we did for City Council in open session. One second, we'll go to the other one. So what we presented to City Council in order to get the authorization to borrow money and to purchase a building for the Lawrence Public Schools central office began with basically us talking about when we came to office and we found that the school central office being housed in a location since 1988, and we looked at some of how much that really cost us, and at least for the past 16 years, it was almost $6 million just in rent payments. That's $6 million just in rent payments. We're going to pay $8 million to buy a property and rehab it, and we'll own it after 30 years. So, you know, if you add in also the other expenses, there's actually over $10 million worth that we've spent to be in that place. So we consider this to be one of those things that just not affordable for one of the poorest school districts in the Commonwealth. We went in and just actually looked at some of the costs more in detail. There is a cost of living increase every year. If you do some of the math going out 30 years, like this loan is going to help us, we're really in a position that the person owning the building or any lease that we might get into will end up making, you know, over $10 million worth on this type of activity if we don't change it. So that's really what drove it. So we got here because we decided it would be best to actually purchase a building versus continue to lease. We allowed the existing lease to expire December 31st. We formed a partnership with Mass Development. I'll tell you who those people are in a second, but basically they're the state agency that specializes in economic development. And we spent a lot of time to find a space and negotiate purchase terms through Mass Development. As you can imagine, we found out, you walk up to the door and you say, hey, we're the City of Lawrence, we'd like to buy your building. We see that you have it listed for $499,000. They immediately started saying, well, we'd like to sell it to the city for $600,000, $699,000. People's properties all of a sudden became millions of dollars worth because they thought the government could pay more. It actually made us not able to do it. So having Mass Development in the game really helped us out at the end. And with Mass Development, we went into different buildings and figured out what's going to have the best project costs and return on what we would pay. That's how we got to that place. And, you know, this was, again, presentation for the City Council and how much it would be for the budget. If you think about it this way, we're going from renting an apartment to owning a house. And so there's still going to be an annual payment, but the payment's going to be different because you're paying off a loan, and it's also going to be different because at the end of the loan payments, you own the building. We also did a comparison of the maintenance and taxes that we've paid before and what we're going to pay going forward. Talked about yearly costs overall and what the 30-year impact when you compare the two. So we asked the City Council for $8 million to borrow. $7.5 of that is going to be to fix the building. $500,000 is actually to buy the building. The building we're talking about is on Essex Street at the corner of Amesbury and Essex Street, and it currently houses a church, used to be a bank. So we're going to have if we take the loan out at $8 million, we're going to have 3.2% interest rate, and 30 years over the loan, we're going to have an annual payment of $422,418. We're hoping that if things go well, we can get a better rate than 3.2, but we know we have to move fast because the economy is not doing that. If the economy starts doing better, interest rates are going to start to move, and it's going to have a negative impact on this deal. So this is what it looked like before. On this side here, you have what we were paying at the old site, the lease amount, plus we were paying for electricity. I believe this is heat. This is taxes, water, and maintenance. And it's not a small thing to say that we were fixing things that were, I know some people would tell you that we weren't fixing all the things we should have been fixing, but we were fixing stuff all the time in that building, and it was really costly. When you compare it to, we go forward, having a purchased site, with a mortgage, and what we think is, and these numbers around utilities are real conservative, because if you think about the way, first of all, it's less space to heat, to light, and to run water through. But secondly, if you think about today's mechanics around those things, it's so cost effective that these are really conservative saving numbers. We think we're going to exceed them. And then at the bottom, I mean, we're just not going to have the same type of maintenance costs. So we think, conservatively speaking, we're going to have a $117,000 savings year over year compared to what we were paying before. Now, even if this wasn't right, and I said this at the city council, even if we were actually paying $117,000 more a year than we were paying the years before, which is not the case, but if we were, it's still a better deal, because when you look about the overall cost going out 30 years, if we stayed on a lease, not just in that, you can see that if we stayed on the lease, it just goes up, and this, at the end of which, we still don't own anything, and we'd have to pay $16 million just on the lease. The cool thing is here, the mortgage is set, there's no change in the mortgage number, and at the end of it, we don't owe anything else. So these all represent the cost of living increases that we talked about with transportation. It's the same thing with these leases. No one lets you stay in their place without increasing their lease every year. Was the case in the past, and it would be the same in the future. So not having that, we would be looking at the same debt service, or the same mortgage payment going forward. So if you do the expenses, this is where we get our initial savings. If you just do the leases and the mortgage with the expenses, you could be in a position 30 years from now to having spent $24 million and be without a place, but have paid a lot of lease and payments to heat somebody else's building and fix somebody else's building. In this situation, we're at that number, we paid off the mortgage, and basically it's ours going forward. Just a little bit about the timeline. The council did vote in May. They expedited it. They waived the 30 days, so we hope to be going to market to borrow the money in the first week of July, last week in June. Mass Development will buy the building from the people who they got into an agreement with. They're going to then sell it to us in June and July. And again, the reason why Mass Development bought the building and not us is because we had to go through a blind LLC to get a fair market value for the property. And they were able to get it for $500,000, even though they wanted to sell it to the city, the property owners, for $699,000. So we think we did pretty good in that sense. In July, we'll begin the design process. It will include people from the school department. By the way, in the onset, people from the school department were involved in how much it would cost to fit out the space they needed, and what that might look like. So that was the driver of total cost for renovation. So the design going towards construction will begin in July. So at the end of that process, between July and December, we'll have plans that they will begin construction in December of this year. That's the idea, to begin construction in December 2015. With an idea that with an expectation that sometime in November, December of 2016, the building will be ready for people to move into in December 16. This is, again, like I said before, it's important for us to get this stuff squared away, and we were able to get the borrowing done and the okay from the city council, because we're really chasing the markets on interest rates. If this was, if we couldn't get close to this number, I'm not sure we would have gone we would have gone forward this process, because it just becomes expensive to do, and the early savings are just not as good as we'd like it have been. But luckily, we think we can get 3.2%. And we think that, we know that the office space that's currently used by central office is space that could be used for a classroom space. And this larger discussion, which, by the way, we have had with the city council on 3 or 4 occasions, letting them know that we have to have a discussion about classroom space, not just about the central office, but really, where do we put the growing number of children that come to our public schools? And what do we do with some of these places that really have gone past their life expectancies, places like the Bruce? And where we would do those things, and things like, and I'm sure you have read in the newspaper, anything's really on the table. There's a lot of options to be done, options to be looked at. But at the end of the day, we have to figure out how to deal with this increased enrollment. So having central office in classroom spaces doesn't help. So we just summarized it for them. We reduced the yearly cost for mortgage and expenses. We reduced the cumulative expenses over 30 years. We have a strong state agency partnership, and I'll show you them in a second. And it'll allow for predictable year-to-year expenses. And we'll do mass development next. So mass development, the short version of this is that they're, I like to call them the economic development ninjas, because they go to communities like ours, Holyoke, Springfield, and they try to make deals that normally wouldn't work in the marketplace work. And they take on development projects that no one else wants to do, borrowing situations that no one else wants to do, and they really do help communities overcome some really awkward development problems. And you'll see that they've done these in different, these are the documents, this presentation, the presentation I just did, were the ones we emailed to you, and there was 2 links attached, so you could download them at your leisure. But they do technical assistance. Hey, how do I turn my Brownsfield site into a plaza? And they can help you with that. Hey, how do I get this, this property that's been down for a long time to be actually productive? And they help you with those conversations. I think some of the things they've done in the past, from trainings to design of new parks to engineering plans, all these things that they just provide in general. One of the things they did recently, and this was actually in the news, 100 Cambridge Street, it looked like this in the past, and it's really a thriving center downtown in Boston. I think they just sold for a ton of money. So it's a 22-story building. They redevelop it. I mean, these guys are really big players. These examples are important to show, not only because it shows the breadth and width of the expertise that we're dealing with in mass development, but also that we know that they can get something done and make it look positive. I think this is in Springfield, the former federal courthouse. And today it's really a modern office building. A lot of people would walk by this empty building for a long time, and it's pretty big. And I know Springfield does have a lot of these buildings like this downtown, and they did that as part of the partnership. I think that's all of it. All right. So there you go. So those 2 presentations is what I did before the city council. I want to make sure we did that in open session. There are clearly questions about details around how much this thing is costing that people have about that goes to why we have an agenda item for discussion in executive session for the proposal. There's questions around the lawsuit with the old building, which again is another reason why we have 237 Essex Realty Trust litigation update on as executive session. For both those reasons, we're allowed through state law to go into executive session. In the former, we go into executive session to talk about the proposal because we're talking about things that we're going to have to go to bid for. And if we go and say, hey, we're going to spend $1 million on nails, and we go out to bid, every single bid that comes back is going to be saying that it's $1 million. We're also in this really strange place with not only just the materials, but also people that we're going to have to hire and all those things. We want to have strategy around them. The law allows us to do that, to go into executive session for that matter. And then on 237, Essex Street Realty versus us, that lawsuit, again, when you're talking about law strategy and your current situation within a within a lawsuit, you can go into executive session to talk about that. And those things, I think we did both those things when we talked before the city council. And I think it's appropriate for us to have the discussion. With us tonight is one of the city attorneys, assistant city attorney, Raquel Ruano. She's in the back of the room, who's prepared to talk to us about the lawsuit and its status. But I'll tell you what I told the city council in open session. The lawsuit, in my opinion, is a scare tactic in not leaving the building. And so we have a lawsuit saying that we breached contract even before we even left, about how we left the property. But I think that we have a good case on that. And even if we go in a situation where the lawsuit means we have to pay some money, it's still a better deal than we have today. And that's the long-term thing. After 30 years, we're going to own a building. We're not going to have all the madness today. And people, I think Councilor Vasquez made the best point. If we had done this 18 years ago, 20 years ago, we'd be really close to the end of a mortgage lease. And who knows if we had some free cash to throw at something. we could kill it right away and own the property. So that was my presentation on the matter. I want to make sure you guys had that information. Like I said, we sent you an email with the links. But any further discussion outside just what you saw, I think is better left for executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With your indulgence, given the late hour and that we have some students that have school tomorrow, I'd like to forego final questions and move to public participation, if that's okay with the group.
By all means.
Mr. Molly, I think you're going to be first on public participation, even though I don't have the list.
Good evening, honorable members. Last days of this academic year have been progress year. We as a parent and a citizen celebrating the success of Lawrence Public School. With the best leadership of Honorable Superintendent Raleigh, our public school has more level 1 school, more high school graduates. Our public school now the best example of improve and progress in the whole nation. Turnaround plan had positive effect on our public school. We as a proud city, now we have a family resource center that parent, educator and children can get together. This immigrant city has rise up. With the leadership of Superintendent Raleigh, our teachers, after years of not having any contract, now they have contract. Lawrence Public School has become the best example of the budget that focuses on the children and the students. The example of the progress Lawrence Public School has been example in the whole nation. We ask you as a parent and the citizen, as an administrator, support our teachers and the union. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Molly. Mr. Molly is the only speaker today for public comment. At this time, Mr. Mayor, do we have a motion to clear the room and move to executive session?
I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to talk about proposal for new LPS central office space, and also to talk about, well, you have to do it separately, to do that first and foremost. Actually, I want to take the litigation first, so we don't want to keep the attorney here very long. So entertain a motion to do 237 Essex Realty Trust litigation update.
Motion.
Second.
Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you. I would indulge the superintendent and I think Seth.
I think we were going to move to a different room, but it may be best to stay here if we can clear
As
the
long as we
room.
shut off the mics.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's open down there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, joy.
Let's move to another room. Let's move to another room. This is open.
Okay.
It's not open.
It's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. Mr. Superintendent, anything else?
I have nothing else at this time. I would ask if you'd make a motion to close.
Motion to adjourn the meeting. Second. Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. Have a good evening.